We can now bring in Simon Mabon, Professor of International Politics at Lancaster University. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, Hamas says it's willing to talk, but Israel says it's sending a delegation to see if there's common ground. What are the chances that these two sides can strike a phase two of the ceasefire deal, given we just have 48 hours?
I would be very surprised if we reached a phase two within those next 48 hours. I think it's such a sensitive issue, such a politically charged issue, an emotive issue, and an issue that's dominated by a whole host of different factors: the political calculations of Benjamin Netanyahu and his coalition government, the security calculations of the Israeli state, the calculations of Hamas and their future, the people of Gaza. Then we bring in the Egyptians, the Qataris, the Americans, and you've got so many different moving parts that all have to coalesce within less than 48 hours. And let's not forget, these talks were supposed to start weeks ago. So to get it over the line in 48 hours, I would be highly surprised, sadly.
I mean, these talks were supposed to start on day 16 of the current ceasefire deal in place. That we, of course, know didn't happen. Now, Israel, some Israeli officials are casting doubt on if Israel would be withdrawing its troops from Gaza. So what does it mean? What are they negotiating then? Essentially an extension of phase one?
So I think there's three main options on the table right now for the Israelis. I think less so for Hamas and the other players involved. So the Israelis have the option to try and extend phase one, which I think is what they're trying to do. They're trying to extend the current status quo so that more hostages can be released without there having to be those serious strategic concessions that Benjamin Netanyahu and others are somewhat reluctant to do, it seems. The second option is to enter stage two, or to at least enter talks around stage two. And I think possibly entering talks around stage two could be tied to an extension of phase one. But again, that requires the agreement of all the various actors involved. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if we were to just see a timeout without any type of agreement having been reached, and just to end in a situation where there's flux, uncertainty, instability, and a descent back into violence, which is going to be a tragedy for everyone in the region.
Steve Witkoff, Donald Trump's envoy, is due back in the Middle East, I believe, in the next few days. Could his presence change the calculus, given that he has successfully arm-twisted Israel?
Quite possibly, although I think we should remember that, that President Biden's, or former President Biden's special envoy, made countless trips to Israel, to Jordan, to Egypt, to Qatar, to try and get such a deal over the line.
Are you talking about Anthony Blinken?
I am talking
Yeah,
about
but
Anthony Blinken.
he used to go back empty-handed so many times.
Exactly. So he didn't manage to do it. Now, the question is Donald Trump in a better position to exert influence over Israel? Well, perhaps so. We saw the video that he posted on Truth Social yesterday, setting out his vision for Gaza, seemingly free from Palestinians, and seemingly a haven for himself and Benjamin Netanyahu to go and sit on the beach. That would be more palatable to the Israelis, but less palatable, of course, to the Palestinians, to Hamas, to the Egyptians, to the Jordanians, to the Qataris. So I'm still not convinced that even Trump's envoy will be able to get a deal over the line here. There's just too much at stake, too many different emotions, too many different calculations.
So, Simon, because as we've had this ceasefire in place in Gaza, yes, the fighting for the most part seems to have stopped in the enclave, but it has picked up over in the West Bank. So the calculus has also changed on that front, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I mean, I've been speaking to people in the West Bank pretty often over the past few weeks, and the stories that I'm hearing are not good at all. There is a widespread displacement of people from their homes, including refugees from various refugee camps, be it the temporary or the more settled types of camps. So the violence, the instability, the uncertainty is not, as you say, restricted to Gaza, but it is increasing in the West Bank, where there is a larger population. There is wider unrest and wider scope for deep-seated anger, because, as we were seeing, the situation is not getting any better.
When we talk about the future of Gaza, something we've seen since these handover ceremonies have been taking place of Israeli hostages and the remains of Israeli hostages, is that Hamas has been intent on demonstrating to the world, to the region, to even Israel, that it is very much in charge of the Gaza Strip. We've seen a show of force, heavily armed men, Hamas fighters, what have you. The question is, who is going to control the Gaza Strip after?
Well, that's the billion-dollar question, I guess. We know that diplomacy and politics is performative. It's about projecting an image, and that's what Hamas is trying to do, clearly. But from the terms that we know about phase two, Hamas is not going to be in a position to be controlling the Gaza Strip. So if that's the case, then who is it? Well, the rumors are that the Israelis are not happy with the Palestinian Authority doing that. I'm not sure exactly how many Palestinians would be happy with the Palestinian Authority being in control of Gaza, let alone in the West Bank, of course, where there's rising anger towards the PA. So that leaves lots of different questions about what could be done, whether it's a technocratic government, whether it's a government that's facilitated by Qatar, by Saudi Arabia, by Egypt. But again, they don't necessarily have the legitimacy on the ground to facilitate this or to make it happen. So it leaves us in a real quandary that we have a rough idea of what phase two might look like, but no real clue as to how we actually get there.
Simon, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Thank you.